Close your eyes for 1 second. Imagine a man 500 years ago walking out of his own house in the middle of the night, leaving behind his wife, his 2 small sons, his comfortable job, his whole world, and walking toward nothing. No map, no money, no certainty that he would ever come back. Just a friend named Mardana beside him, a rabab on his shoulder, and a fire in his chest that no one else could see. That man did not know it yet, but he was about to change the spiritual history of the world forever. His name was Nanak. Today we call him Guru Nanak, and tonight I want to take you on his road, because the 5 lessons he carried on that road are not just for Sikhs, they are not just for Punjab, they are not just for history books, they are for every single human being in this room who has ever felt lost, who has ever searched for meaning, who has ever asked the question, why am I here? And what am I supposed to do with this one life I have been given? Because that is what a true spiritual seeker is, isn't it? Not someone who has all the answers. A seeker is someone who is still asking the question. And if you are still asking, if something inside you is still restless, still hungry for truth, then tonight, Guru Nanak is speaking directly to you. Let me take you back to the beginning. A boy is born in a small village called Talwandi, in a Hindu merchant family, in a land ruled by foreign emperors, torn between 2 great religions that were, at that time, more interested in fighting each other than in finding God. From his earliest years, this boy is different. While other children play in the dust, Nanak sits under a tree and asks the elders questions they cannot answer. At the age of 9, on the day of his sacred thread ceremony, a ritual every Hindu boy of his caste was expected to go through without question, young Nanak refuses to wear the thread. The priest is shocked, the family is embarrassed, and the boy, calmly, looks at the gathered crowd and says something that will echo through centuries, that a thread made of cotton can break, can get dirty, can be lost. But what he wants is a thread of compassion, a thread of contentment, a thread of truth, one that is spun from virtue and worn on the soul, not the body. A 9-year-old child said that. Sit with that for a second. While we, as adults, often spend our whole lives following rituals because this is how it has always been done, this child was already asking, but why? What is the real purpose behind this? This, my friends, is the very first lesson Guru Nanak gives to every spiritual seeker. Question the empty ritual, but never abandon the search for truth. He was not rejecting religion, he was rejecting religion without soul. There is a difference between a man who prays 5 times because his heart is on fire with love for the divine, and a man who prays 5 times because the clock told him to, and his neighbors are watching. Guru Nanak spent his entire life trying to wake people up from the second kind of life into the first. He once said that people had turned worship into a performance, bowing the body while the mind wandered far away, chasing money, chasing lust, chasing pride, and he asked, what is the use of bowing your head if your heart never bows? What is the use of fasting from food if you are still feasting on greed? This is so relevant for us today, isn't it? How many of us go through entire rituals of life, religious, social, even relationships, completely on autopilot? We say the words, but our soul is somewhere else. Guru Nanak's first gift to the seeker is this fierce honesty. Stop performing spirituality and start living it. Ask your own questions. Don't borrow someone else's faith like a second-hand coat. Build your own, brick by brick, through your own sincere search. That is lesson number 1, and already, just from this, we could spend the whole night talking. But there is more. There is so much more. Let's keep walking. As Nanak grew older, he was put to work. First taking the family buffaloes out to graze, where he would fall into such deep meditation that the cattle would wander into other people's fields and eat their crops, and the angry farmer would come complaining to his father. Later, his father gave him money to start a business, a small trade, buy low somewhere, sell high somewhere else. The basic formula of commerce that every family wants their son to master. Nanak took the money, went out, and on the way he met a group of hungry, exhausted holy men who had nothing to eat. He spent every single coin feeding them. When he returned home empty-handed, his father was furious. Where is the profit? Where is the trade? And Nanak looked at him and said something so simple yet so profound. He called it the true trade, the real bargain, the only transaction that actually matters in this life. Feeding a hungry soul, easing someone's pain, doing good without expecting return. That, he said, is the only business that pays dividends beyond this lifetime. This brings us to the second lesson, one that the modern world desperately needs to hear. True wealth is measured by what you give, not by what you accumulate. We live in a world obsessed with net worth, follower count, square footage, brand names. We are taught from childhood to chase, to accumulate, to make it. And there is nothing wrong with honest ambition. In fact, Guru Nanak himself later worked as an accountant for years, earned an honest living, never glorified poverty or laziness. But he drew a hard, unbreakable line between earning and hoarding, between ambition and greed. He taught what came to be one of the three central pillars of his entire philosophy. Kirat Karni, earn your bread through honest labor, with your own two hands, never through cheating, never through exploitation, never by stepping on someone else's neck to climb your own ladder. And alongside that pillar stands another, Van Chakna, share what you earn. Not after you've kept enough for 10 lifetimes. Not as a tax write-off. Share as a way of life, as a reflex, the way you breathe in and breathe out. Earn honestly, share generously. That is the complete cycle. There is a story that captures this so beautifully, I want you to really picture it. Years later, as a grown spiritual teacher already known across the land, Guru Nanak was once invited by a wealthy man named Malik Bhago, who was hosting a grand feast and had invited religious figures from far and wide to bless his name and his hospitality. Guru Nanak refused to attend. Instead, he went and sat in the humble home of a poor carpenter named Bhai Lalo and ate the simple, coarse bread that Lalo had earned through honest, hard sweat. When word reached Malik Bhago, he was insulted. He summoned Guru Nanak and demanded to know why his rich feast was rejected in favor of a poor man's crumbs. And Guru Nanak asked for two things to be brought before the entire gathered court: a piece of Bhai Lalo's humble bread and a piece of Malik Bhago's rich feast. He held one in each hand and pressed them. From Lalo's bread, it is said, drops of milk appeared. From Bhago's rich food, drops of blood appeared. The message needed no further words. Food earned through the exploitation of others, through the sweat and tears of the poor squeezed dry by the rich, is soaked in their blood, no matter how delicious it looks on the plate. But food earned through honest, humble labor, however coarse, is pure as milk, blessed by God himself. How many of us, even today, sit at tables loaded with success that came at someone else's expense and call it a blessing? How many of us climb so fast that we forget to check whose shoulders we stepped on? Guru Nanak is asking you tonight, is your bread milk or is it blood? That question alone could keep you awake tonight, and I hope it does, in the best possible way. Now let's move to the third lesson, and this one might be the most radical thing Guru Nanak ever did. More radical even than walking out of his house. More radical than refusing the sacred thread. After years of preaching, after his famous disappearance into a river for 3 days that the village believed had drowned him, only for him to emerge transformed, having received, as he described it, a direct experience of the divine, Guru Nanak stood up and uttered one single sentence that, frankly, could get a man killed in that time, and sadly can still provoke anger in certain corners of the world, even today. He said, "Na koi Hindu, na koi Musalman." There is no Hindu, there is no Muslim. Now please understand the weight of those words in the context of his time. He was not saying religions don't matter or that identity is meaningless. He was saying something far deeper, that before you are a Hindu or a Muslim, before you are Punjabi or Persian, before you wear any label society hands you at birth, you are a soul, a spark of the same one divine light. And that light does not check your religion at the door before it enters your heart. He spent his life traveling, to Mecca, to Baghdad, to the Himalayas, to Sri Lanka, engaging with Muslim scholars, Hindu yogis, Buddhist monks, debating, listening, learning, and at the end of every single encounter, his message stayed exactly the same. The divine is one. Call that one whatever name your tongue is comfortable with. Allah, Ram, Waheguru, God, the universe. The name is just a door, and every sincere door leads to the same house. This is lesson number 3, and I need every single one of you to really absorb this one. Stop building walls where the divine has only ever built bridges. Look at our world today. We fight over labels. We judge a person's worth by their religion, their sect, their nationality, their skin, their bank balance, their last name. We have turned identity into a weapon instead of recognizing it as simply one small part of a much larger soul. Guru Nanak looked at the rigid, bloody religious divisions of his own century and refused to pick a side because he understood that picking a side was exactly the problem. The seeker's job is not to defend a label. The seeker's job is to dissolve the ego that needs a label to feel important in the first place. When you truly meet God, when you have your own 3 days in the river moment of awakening, you stop asking what religion the person next to you belongs to, and you start asking only one question. Is there love in this heart? Is there honesty in this heart? Is there humility in this heart? That is the only test that ever mattered to Guru Nanak, and it should be the only test that matters to us. Let's go even deeper now, because there is a fourth lesson, and this one is so practical, so daily, so usable in your actual real life, starting tomorrow morning, that I almost want to stop and make you write it down right now. Guru Nanak gave the world the practice of Nam Japna, the constant remembrance of the divine name. But please, please do not hear this and think he meant sitting cross-legged on a mountain chanting for 40 years while ignoring your job, your family, your responsibilities. That is not what he taught at all. In fact, he was deeply critical of those very ascetics, those yogis who abandoned their families and their duties to find God in isolation, as if God could only be found far away from ordinary human life. He met many of them on his travels in the Himalayas, and he told them, quite bluntly, that running away from the world is not the same as rising above it. True remembrance of the divine, he taught, happens while you live in the world fully, while you work, while you raise your children, while you pay your bills, while you face your problems. The goal is not to escape your life. The goal is to remember the divine while living your life, so completely that your work itself becomes worship, your kindness itself becomes prayer, your honesty itself becomes meditation. He gave us a beautiful image for this. Live like a lotus on water. The lotus grows in muddy water, surrounded by dirt and decay, and yet its petals stay untouched, dry, pure, lifted above the mud, even while its roots remain firmly planted in it. That is the seeker's challenge, not to abandon the muddy water of daily life, but to remain unstained by it while standing fully inside it. You will face betrayal. You will face loss. You will face temptation. You will face exhaustion. The question is not whether the mud touches your life. The question is whether you let it stain your soul. Nam Japna, that constant inner remembrance, is what keeps the petals dry. It is a discipline you carry into the office, into the kitchen, into the traffic jam, into the argument with your spouse, into the moment someone cuts you off and your blood boils. In that very moment, the seeker remembers, breathes, returns the mind again and again and again, like training a muscle, back to the awareness of something greater than this one petty moment of anger. This is not weakness, my friends. This is the hardest spiritual discipline there is, far harder than any retreat in the mountains, because it asks you to find your center while the world is actively trying to knock you off it every single day in real time. And this naturally flows into the fifth and final lesson, the one that in many ways contains all the others inside it, the one Guru Nanak demonstrated not just with words but with the entire architecture of the movement he left behind. He established something called the Langar, a free community kitchen attached to every Sikh place of worship, where to this very day in gurdwaras across the entire planet, absolutely anyone, rich or poor, Hindu or Muslim or atheist, king or beggar, any caste, any color, any background whatsoever, sits on the same floor, at the same level, and eats the same free meal, cooked and served by volunteers who ask for nothing in return. Think about how revolutionary that was in a society built on rigid caste hierarchy, where some people were considered too impure to even share a well with others, let alone share a meal sitting shoulder to shoulder. Guru Nanak did not write an essay about equality. He built a kitchen about it. He turned philosophy into food, into action, into something you could literally taste and feel with your own hands and tongue. He also championed the dignity and equality of women at a time when society treated them as lesser beings, asking pointedly, how can we call women inferior when it is women who give birth to kings, to prophets, to every single human being who has ever walked this earth? This is the fifth lesson, and it is this: your spirituality is only as real as your service. Belief without action is just decoration. You can meditate for hours, you can recite every scripture by heart, you can wear every outward symbol of devotion, but if you walk past a hungry person without feeding them, if you look down on someone because of their caste, their color, their job, their gender, their bank balance, then whatever you are practicing is not what Guru Nanak taught. Seva, selfless service, was not an optional extra credit assignment in his teaching. It was the proof. It was the test. It was the only verifiable evidence that the inner remembrance was real. The Langar still feeds millions of people every single day around the world, regardless of religion, completely free, no questions asked, no conditions attached. 500 years later, his kitchen is still burning. Let that sink in. Most empires fall. Most fortunes get divided and forgotten within 2 generations. But a kitchen built on the simple idea that every human being deserves to eat with dignity, regardless of who they are, That kitchen is still standing, still serving, still teaching the world its lesson, long after kings and emperors of his time have been reduced to footnotes in history books. So let's bring this all together now, because I want you to leave this room tonight, not just inspired, but actually changed, even slightly, even just a little bit, starting from tomorrow morning. Guru Nanak walked out of his comfortable home into the unknown so that he could ask, question every ritual that has lost its soul, and never settle for performance over truth. He emptied his pockets, feeding strangers, and taught us that the only wealth that truly counts is what flows out of your hands to someone in need, earned honestly and shared generously, milk and never blood. He stood in front of furious crowds and declared that there is no Hindu, no Muslim, only souls, and dared us to stop hiding behind labels and start recognizing the same one light in every face we meet. He lived fully in the world, in marriage, in work, in responsibility, while teaching us to remain like the lotus, untouched by the mud, even as we stand rooted in it, remembering the divine not in escape, but in the middle of ordinary, busy, complicated daily life. And he built a kitchen instead of writing only a sermon to prove forever that real spirituality always shows up as real service. You came into this room tonight as a seeker. Maybe you didn't even know that's what you were. Maybe you just came because you were curious, or someone invited you, or the title caught your eye. But something inside you has been searching, hasn't it? Searching for meaning, for direction, for a reason to keep going when life gets heavy. Guru Nanak's whole life is an answer to that search. Not a complicated theology, not a list of rules you have to memorize, just 5 simple, burning truths. Search with sincerity, give more than you take, see the one light in every soul, remember the divine even in the noise of ordinary life, and let your service speak louder than your words ever could. So tonight, when you walk out of these doors, walk out the way Nanak walked out of his, not running away from your life, but walking deeper into it, with new eyes, with a softer heart, with a fire that no one else can see, but you will feel every single day from now on. The road is still open, the lotus is still growing in the mud, the kitchen is still warm, still serving, still waiting for you to bring your own hands to it. The only question left, the only question that has ever really mattered, is the one Guru Nanak asked the world 500 years ago and is still asking each one of us tonight. Will you keep performing your life, or will you finally start living it? Thank you.